Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're now going to be looking at the second part of chapter 18, data manipulation. So this is a database chapter. We're going to be looking at annotating the exam paper, looking at a query and report question, including the use of different search criteria, looking at labels, summary queries, extract, and also printing. So we covered the first part in the first video. So now we're going to be looking at a typical report question. So before we can answer this question, we have to annotate the question, but we have to identify what we do first. So if I go to the next slide, then I can come back to here. So before we can make the report, we have to create a query. So in a query, the first task is to select the fields we have to use. So if we go to this question paper here, as you can see here, we have to show the following fields. When you're saving a query, you need to save the query using a title that will appear at the top of the report. Okay. The next thing will be the search criteria, which will help filter the results down. So here we have 4 different examples. So level is extreme, residential yes, duration is 10 days or less, and excludes those activities located in Ireland. So that will be not Ireland. And then the calculated runtime field and formatting. So that's where you have to create a new field. Okay, so in this example, you have to create a new course cost field, which will multiply the daily cost by the duration plus the insurance fields. The fields are normally italic, and the fields would have to go into square brackets. So that's what you do in a query. So the first task is to select the fields which you will be shown in the report, entering the title that will appear at the top of the report as the query title, entering the search criteria. Now when you do enter the search criteria, you have to enter them one by one so you can check to see if the results have been filtered down, and then the calculated runtime field and formatting. Now these two you can do in any order, but it's really important to start off with selecting the fields and entering the title. So if I go to the example I've already done, I will be deleting these and doing it again. So in a query, if you go to design view, you can see we've selected the fields, we enter the search criteria, we've hidden some fields, but we still have searched by those particular fields. When I was saving the query, I saved it as the same name that was going to go at the top of the report. Okay, so now let's look at what we do in a report. So in a report, we can sort the information alphabetically A to Z. We can sort the page orientation. So this is in a report wizard. Again, you'd have to write down a report title at the end of the report wizard, so to ensure the title comes at the top of the report. Also, in a report layout, we can ensure all data fits on a single page wide. We can ensure all data is in full, and we may have to reorder fields if necessary. Sometimes when you do a sort on a particular field, you may have to rearrange the order of the fields. The next thing we should do on a report, that should be 4 and 5, let me just change that, could be a calculation. It could be a count, a sum, a max and a min. So if we look at the report, let's go down to the bottom. Here we have the average cost per day, which is basically working out the average of this column here. And then we have the label as well, which is on the left. Okay, and then you can include details in the header and footer. So that could be your name, for example. So the header and footer would be done in design view. So this is a header, the report header, and a report footer. Okay. So like I said before, you can do the report, you have to do the query. The query comes before the report. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to actually start this question, and I'm going to actually delete this information here, and we're going to do it from scratch. So let me delete this, and let me delete this as well. Okay, so as you can see, I've already annotated this exam question. So before we start, you have to work out which task is part of the query and which task is part of the report. So the first thing we should always do is select the fields. So the first thing we need to do is select the fields. So we have to create a query wizard. So create query wizard. Simple query wizard, and you may be selecting fields from different tables. Okay, so let's have a look. The first field we need to select is course code activity type. So course code activity type, location, level and daily cost. So location, level and daily cost. You need to make sure you enter or select the fields in the right order. Duration, and the course cost will be the field we create, so we don't need to select anything else. Click on next. So if I had another table, you could select from other tables as well, fields. If we click on next, now when you get to this point here, so if we go back to here, now we have to enter the title, which will also appear at the top of the report. So if I look here, it's going to be extreme outdoor activities. So also pay close attention. If it's capital E, then you have to include a capital E, and capital O and capital A for activities. Okay. Outdoor. Just let me check the spelling mistakes. You don't want to be making any spelling mistakes. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm finished. So we've done the first two parts. We selected the fields, we've entered the query title. So as you can see, we have the title here, Extreme Outdoor Activities. So the next thing we should do is check how many records you start off with. So now what we need to do is enter our search criteria. Okay, so underline the search criteria. So as you can see, you've got 4 different examples, and when you enter the search criteria, enter them one step at a time. So if we go to design view, the first search criteria is going to be level is extreme. So do we have level? Yep. Let's type in extreme. Run, and we're down to 37 results, and as you can see, the level is extreme. Okay. Next search criteria, residential is yes. So residential, as you can see, we haven't added residential here, but we can add an additional field, and we can search by this field. But what we don't want to do is show this field. So if I type in yes, now we're down to 28 records. But because residential does not appear in a list of fields that need to be displayed, what we can do is hide this field, and it still should be the same amount of records, 28. The next search criteria is duration is 10 days or less. So less than or equal to 10. So if we go back to access, duration here, so less than or equal to 10. So we're now down to 25 records, and as you can see, we include 10 and it's anything less than 10. So you can click down here, you can see the highest number is 10, and we're basically going down from 10. Okay, the last thing we need to do is the location excludes those activities located in Ireland. So exclude means not to include. So it's going to be not Ireland for location. Okay, so we don't want to show Ireland. So if you go to design view, type in not, and then what you want to hide basically, so not Ireland. And now we're down to 23 records. So if I go back to here, so the first thing we did was selected the fields in the query wizard. We entered a title that will appear at the top of the report. We've now entered our search criteria one at a time. Every time we enter the search criteria, the results got less and less. Now we have to create the calculated runtime field. Now this is sometimes part of the question, sometimes it's not part of the question. In this case, it is part of the question. So we have to create a new field called course cost, which is calculated at runtime. This field will calculate the daily cost multiplied by duration plus the insurance. Now you'll notice these are fields because the information is in italic. Also, if you go to design view You can see all of the information in a question. So daily cost, yeah, it's a field. Duration and insurance, all pay here, so they're all fields. So to create a calculator field, you can come to the end. It's best to write it down on a piece of paper first or on the exam paper, then you can enter it in. So the first thing we need to enter is the title of the new field, so course underscore cost, course underscore cost, and then you have to write colon. Now we need to look at the first field, which is part of this question. So the first field is going to be daily cost. So look, we have to enter it exactly as it appears here, including the underscore. So because it's a field, we enter this as into square brackets. Daily cost multiplied by the duration. So this field here. Again, since this is a field, we have to put it into square brackets. Make sure you don't include spelling mistakes. Plus the insurance. So let me double check. Okay. And then we can close and we can click on run, and we have the course cost. Now if this information was not formatted into currency, then what we can do is click on property sheet, format, and then we can select the currency and the number of decimal places. So mine was done already automatically. Sometimes you may have to go to property sheet to apply the currency. Now you'll notice the daily cost was in euros, so, and this is in pounds. So let me make sure the currency matches up. Okay, so normally you look at the question paper and check what currency they want to use. Let me save the changes. So we have finished now these 4 tasks in a query. So we selected the fields. We did search by residential, but we did hide that field because it's not part of the fields we have to display. So we selected the fields. When I was saving the query, I saved it as extreme outdoor activities. This will be the same title that appears at the top of the report. Okay, I then entered the search criteria, one search criteria at a time. Okay, there's 4 in total. Sometimes you may have to evidence this into the or print screen this into the evidence document as your selection criteria. Okay, and then the last thing we did was the new field, the calculated runtime field. Okay, so now let's look at what we do in a report. So in a report wizard, we're going to sort any information. Okay, we're going to select the page orientation, and then we're going to insert the title again if necessary. Okay, so before you go to the report wizard, check the search criteria. So that's extreme, that's 10 or less. Okay, and the location doesn't include Ireland, and the residential was also correct as well. All of them should be yes. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now I can continue to my report. So to create the report, you click on create report wizard. Yeah, let's save the changes. And because we named the query with the same title, it makes it easy to identify the query to the report. So let's select all of the fields, including course cost. That's a new field that we created. Next. Next. Now let's look at if there's any sort. So sorts the data into ascending order of location. So location is ascending. And then into descending order of daily cost. So we're now onto the report section. So daily cost will be descending. Where's daily cost? Here we go. We can just click on this option here to change. So we've completed a sort. Now we need to select the page orientation. Is it portrait? Is it landscape? It's going to be landscape. Okay, next. And at this point here, you may have to enter the title again. Mine still appeared because I'm only using data from one table. So extreme outdoor activities. So I've done the sort. I've selected the page orientation, and the report title is still there. Okay, and then we can click on finish. And now we have our report. As you can see, some of the information has been cut off. So if I go to layout view, The next step now, what we need to do is ensure all of the information fits on one page wide, show all data in full, and reorder the fields if necessary, so put them into the right order. So let me first of all put the fields back into the right order. Because we've done a sort on location and daily cost, these fields will now appear here. So what we need to do is put these back into the right order. So show only the fields: course code, activity type, location, level, daily cost, duration, and course cost in this order. So the first fields are course code and then activity. So I'm going to press Control. Let's just make these really small. And was it course code? Let me double check. Yeah, course code and then activity. So let me just move these here. Okay, so that fits in. I can move this across because activity is going to be the next field. Again, you want to make sure you're not cutting off any of the data. At the moment I have cut off the data, so make sure you don't cut off any of the data. You can go scroll down and you can have a look. Yep, I'm happy with that. If it's proven to be difficult to fit the data, you can always go to home and you can resize the information to make it a little bit smaller if it's proven to be difficult to fit the data. Right, so after activity, it's going to be type, then location. Okay, so let me just keep moving these on just to make some more space. So it's going to be type and then location. So this is the field which we need to move. So again, I'm pressing Control to select the full content. Okay, so type, then location. Let me double check. So type, location, level. Type. We can move location now to here. Let's move the daily cost. We can move the level across to here. Okay. After level, let me double check. Daily cost, duration, and course cost. So now the rest of the fields are in the right order, but we just need to make sure all of the information is shown in full. Okay, and we can move this one across now, duration, and then course cost as well. Okay, so if I go to print preview, if I go to file, print preview, you can see it fits one page wide. What you don't want to do, if you go to design view, you don't want to increase the size here, because if you do, and then if you go to print preview, yes, I know it's not going to fit, you'll see there's an extra part of the report coming off onto a second page, which is not what we want. So okay, so make sure you don't increase the size here. Again, if I go to a print preview, you can see it fits from one page wide. It can be many pages tall, but as long as it fits one page wide, then that's fine. And again, we can check to see if all of the information is fit. So yep, there's no information that's been cut off. I'm happy with that. Okay, so we've done this part here, so we fit onto single page wide. We're showing all the data in full. What we mean by that is we're not doing anything like this. We're not cutting off the data, so we're showing all of the data in full. Okay, the fields have been put into the right order. Now let's see if there's a calculation. So we've done this part. Fits on a single page wide, landscape orientation. Now what we have to do is calculate the average daily cost, position below the daily cost column. So in layout view, to calculate the average daily cost, what we can do is highlight this information here, so daily cost, Then if we go up to totals, we can click on the average function, and this should give us the average below here. Okay. And then what we need to do is insert a label. So with any calculation, you will have to include a label. Okay, has a label to the left of this number, average cost per day. And again, pay special attention. If there's a capital A, then use a capital A. So if I go into design view, click on this icon to insert a label. So we need to insert a label to the left of this value, average cost per day. And then we can just increase or decrease the size. If we go down, yeah, it's on the left of that average, and you'll notice the average here is below this daily cost or course cost column. Was it a course cost? Let me just double check. Calculate the average daily cost. Okay, it's a good thing I've just checked then, because I've worked out the average on the wrong field. But it's a good thing I'm checking. Okay, so let me just delete this actually. Let me move this across here. So look, it can happen to me, so you need to make sure you read the questions properly. So it was actually, if I go back to here, calculate the average daily cost. Okay, so that's why I've highlighted it, but obviously for some reason I didn't read the question properly. So let me go back and let me do the average on this one instead. There we go. So be careful, you know, it's quite easy to make a mistake. The reason I made a mistake then, because I just saw cost and assumed it was going to be this one. Right, so let me have a look now. So do we have this in a heading, extreme outdoor activities? Yes, we do. Okay, and then has your name, center number and candidate number on the right at the top of the report. So the last step is to insert a header or footer. So to insert a header, you come to design view. Now, if you insert your name at the top of the report header, and if you've got 2 pages, your name will only appear on the first page. Now, if you were to insert your name on the page header, your name would appear on every page. Same with the page footer. If your name was on the page footer, it appears on every page. If it's in a report footer, it just appears on the very last page. So if you are printing 2 or 3 pages, your name would be on the last. Now, if they don't tell you where to insert your name, my advice is just insert it into the header. So, Yasser Ahmed. Let me double check what order they want the information in. So center and then candidate number right at the top of the, in this case they are telling me where they want this information, so that's why I've highlighted the key parts of this question. So right at the top, and then my candidate number. Okay, and then what we can do, we can just, and if you want to do, you know, so your name stands out there, but you can slightly make it bigger. It's not necessary, but obviously if you want to make it obvious, then you can do. I would make sure it's all the way to the right. So yeah, that's make sure nothing's cut off. Okay, so before you print, you go to print preview. My name is here. We fit to 1 page wide. It's only 1 page tall as well. My label is at the bottom, average cost per day, and then the average is below the daily cost column. So before I print, I want to check if the title is correct, including capital E, capital O, capital A. Okay, the fields are in a correct order. Okay, there's no data cut off. My name is at the top right. Yep, I'm happy with this, then I can print this off. Okay, so if I go through the next few slides, so just before I do actually, it's really important you do annotate your question paper. If it's a query task, you can write a Q next to the bullet point. If it's a report task, you can write an R. The first thing we always do is select the fields. Okay, make sure you annotate any calculated fields before you do it. Okay, make sure you write down all of the different search criteria. So before you start the report, you can check the search criteria is correct or not. So I'm just going to be going through these slides now. So I've got some examples here. So always the first task will be to create a query wizard, and then you select in fields. So if it's a relationship database, you might be selecting fields from more than one table. So you can click down and select fields from different tables. So here we have 3 different examples. So show only the fields, then these are the fields, then this is another one and another one. You may select fields from different tables in a relationship database. You may have to select a field later. So the example here was residential. Search by that field and then hide that field. Okay, so when we get to this point here in a report, we're only showing the fields which they were asking for in the same order. Okay, the next thing is include the report title as a query title, so then it becomes easier to identify this query was for this report. Okay, so again, be careful about spelling mistakes, use of capital letters. It has to be 100% accurate. So this one's got brackets and a colon in, so you have to write it as it appears on the question paper. Now, like I said, task 3 and 4 you can do in any order. Maybe you want to do 4 before 3, it doesn't really matter. So it's a search criteria. Okay, that's the next thing we've got here. So show only the records where the build years was after 2010 and the length is 40 or less. Have a look at the dates. Okay, if the date is shown in full, then you'd have to write something like this. So you can say greater than the last day in 2010, so 31/12/2010, or greater than or equal to the first day in 2011. Length is 40 or less, so less than or equal to 40. So this dates is the typical problem for some people. The next one is show only where the records where the type is water. So you simply type in water for the type. Residential, yes. Duration is 12 days or less. Okay, and excludes those activities located in Scotland, so not Scotland. What some people would write is Scotland, and then they'll be left with 2 records, for example. Next example, show only the records where the country is France. So we can just simply type in France for the country, and cars have not been dispatched. For dispatch, you write, it's going to be a Boolean field, so either yes or a no. So you don't write not. It's check the data in that field, it's either going to be yes or no. And you'd have to write no for the cars which have not been dispatched. Okay, as mentioned before, you can search by a field and then check if it's worked and then hide it, okay, if it's not required with the report. Okay, and it's really important you check the number of records after you typed in one search criteria. The number of records should reduce every time you type in a search criteria, so you can check at the bottom to see if the results have been reduced. Okay, we are now going to be looking at the search criteria in a little bit more detail. Okay, to go through the different search criteria, I've opened up now my movies database. Okay, I'm just going to simply create a query using all of the fields just to show you the different examples. So select all of the fields, next, and let's call it example. Let's have a look at the data before we start searching. Okay, so in this database we have a code field, we have the movie names, in stock, which is Boolean, so yes or no, the genre, data release, type, price, how many copies were sold, the rating, the duration, and the actors. So with the actors field, you'll notice we have more than one actor per a movie. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is, if I just press save, is when to use the wildcard search. So let's say, for example, I wanted to find all movies which include Channing Tatum. Okay, so if I go to design view and go to actors, and if I was just to type in Channing Tatum and then click on run, it may find me one movie which only contains Channing Tatum, there's nothing else. But I know that's not the right answer. Okay, so if I zoom in here, okay, and if I come down, there's many movies which contain Channing Tatum. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when you're trying to find information that contains, you need to use a star at the start and a star at the end. You normally do use the like search criteria when there's more than one type of information in a field. So in the example I'm showing you, if I delete, we have more than one actor. Okay, so I want to find in this field anything that contains Channing Tatum. So what we do, if we go back to the design view, go to actors, I type in star. I'm going to copy and paste Channing Tatum, star. And I should find any movies that contain Channing Tatum. So we've got 7 records, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So using a star at the start and the end, we'll find anything that contains. You can also find additional pieces of information if we type in Channing Tatum, or for example another movie actor name is Patrick Wilson. So if I type in Patrick Wilson, star, so if I click off it, you'll see automatically it says or like Patrick Wilson. If I click and run, now we have 10 records. Okay, so we've got Channing Tatum. Okay, Channing Tatum. Here we have no Channing Tatum, but we have Patrick Wilson. So the criteria is Channing Tatum or Patrick Wilson. Okay, let me clear this. Let's look at the next example. Okay, you may want to search between dates, or you may want to search between values. So let's say if I wanted to search between dates, you write between the first date and then you can type in the second date. Okay, so if I go back to here, so we want to search in this field here. Before we can search, check the format of the date. Obviously ensure the format of the date matches with the search criteria that we enter. So you'd have to write in between, if we make this a bit bigger, the first date and the second date. And this will find movies between those dates here. So what were the dates again? So 2010 to 2012. So you can see these movies are within those dates here. Okay. What if we wanted to use the same search criteria, but this time for sold? So let's say between 10 and 50. So the sold is now between the values which include 10 and also 50. Okay, so let's go back. So if you are doing using a between search criteria, the between will also include this date, and then anything in between. Same with the values, it will include the values and also any values in between. Now we're going to look using an or. We kind of used it here in the first example, so let's use it on the genre. So let's say we want action or crime. So on the genre, you can type in action or crime. Okay, so that would find movies which are either action or crime. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That's quite straightforward. Get rid of that. Okay, what if you want to find something excluding a particular genre or some piece of data? So not to include. So if we come to here, let's say for example not action. So this is one way of doing it. Okay, so we can't see action in here. Okay, and then what we can do, we can click down here to check. No, I can't see action. We can also do write it like this. So less than, more than, and then action. So this is something we do in access. And again, you can see action's been excluded. Okay. Let's go to the next example. So let's say we want to find the sold. Let's go to our database. Yeah, sold is less than 10. So if I go to sold, if I write in 10, or less than 10, this basically finds all of sold which are less than 10. Okay, what if I did greater than 10? This would find now movies which are sold greater than 10. So we're not including 10, we're saying greater than 10. What if I wanted to include 10? What you'd have to do is write greater than and then equal to 10. So the equals comes after the greater than. Okay, I don't think I've got any movies which include 10, but that's what you'd have to write in. Okay, right, and the last, or finally, we're going to end with this one here. So let's say we want to find something beginning with a certain value. So let's say if I close this, we want to find all of the codes which begin with 11. So if you come to code, so you want to start with 11 and then you want to write star. So we're going to find something that begins with 11, okay? And even if you forget, you can try the other method which I'm about to show you. So these are the codes which start with 11. What if we wanted to find something that ends in a certain value? So let's say we want to find a code ending in 24. So in this case, you put star and then 24. So these codes should be the ones which end in 24. And what I was saying before is if you forget in which order we do this, you can just try both. And through the process of elimination, we can work out which one we need to use. Okay, something I haven't included on this PowerPoint is not null. So if I delete this information, you can see some of the ratings don't have values. So if I want to find the values, the movies with no rating, you can type in null. And these will find the blank fields. Okay. What if I don't want to find the blank fields? I want to find the fields which are not blank. So what we can say is not null. Okay. So now we find all of the fields which contain a piece of data. Okay, so that's the search criteria. Pay special attention to the dates. Okay, dates are normally the tricky ones. Sometimes people would make the mistake if the data is in a full format, they may type in 2010 to 2012. Okay, so that's not going to work. You need to write in the correct format of the date. Okay, right. So let's go on to the next slide. This is a calculated runtime field. Okay, so this is again part of the query. So when you are doing a calculated runtime field, you do it in a design view. You come to the end. So the example here is we have a new field called new stock level. We're going to use the current stock field and we want to basically add 5. Okay, so you write in the name of the new field with a colon. If we're going to use an existing field, you have to include it into a square bracket. It has to be exactly as it appears here, even if there's a space or underscore, plus 5. Okay. If I come here, for example, if I go back to this example here, let me just save. This is a common mistake some people could make. So I'm going to insert a spelling mistake. I'm going to include an extra Y. And if I click on run, we have this problem here, daily cost. It's saying basically this field does not exist. Okay, it's thinking it's this one, but obviously because of the spelling mistake, it can't match up to this field. So if this box comes up, what you should be doing is checking to see if the spelling mistake is correct. So now if I click on run, it's worked and it's made a calculation using the daily cost. Okay, so if you want to format the new runtime field, you can use the property sheet. Okay, in design view, you can open it up, click, and you can apply formatting. So currency, decimal places is up to you. Okay, so not up to you actually, it's up to what the question's asking. Okay, so that's that part done. And these are typical questions. So the new field was called total births. Sleeps and crew are in italics, so automatically that tells me their fields. So this field will calculate the total number of births by adding the sleeps plus the crew. The next example contains a new field called daily cost, which is calculated runtime and displayed as a currency. This field will calculate the course cost, can you see it's italic, divided by duration. So you got the name of the new field, colon, course cost in square brackets, divide, which is the slash, by duration. And this example here contains a new field called delivered price, which is calculated at runtime. This field will calculate the cost price. You can see it's italic, so it's going to be a field of the car plus a standard delivery charge of 200. Now 200 is not a field, so you don't include 200 into any brackets. So you got delivered price, colon, that's the name of the new field. Cost price is a field we're going to be using, so we place it into square brackets, plus 200. Okay, so once you've done the query, then we move on to the report. So in the report, the first thing in the report wizard that they'll ask is, do you want to sort any data? So you may sort 2 records and 1 record into ascending or descending. So you select the field, then you can double or click on this option to change from ascending to descending or back to ascending. Okay, and then the report wizard will ask for the page orientation. So the question will normally say portrait or landscape. If you do sort by these fields, remember to put the fields back into the correct order after the sort in a layout view. If there are 2 sorts in the report, then you should do it in the report wizard. So I'm always saying now to my students, always do the sort in the report wizard. Okay. You can also set the page orientation in the report wizard. So let's say, for example, you forget. If we go back to here, and for some reason, if I go to layout view, if I go to page setup, you by mistake put it as portrait. You can change it back to landscape as well by using these options here. So page setup. Let me go back to the question. Okay, and then the next thing we should do is try or enter the title that will appear at the top of the report. So sometimes this will stay from the query, sometimes you may have to type it in again. So again, make sure you type it in exactly. Okay, then we'll go to layout view. Okay, and we can arrange the order of the fields. So make sure the report title is in the same, or it's the same as the report header. Okay, format the report in layout view, making sure that all field names and data is visible. Okay, so let me just zoom into here. This is just some information about the report header. So this is the report header. So any information will appear on only the first or last page. So the report header, if you have the name here, it will only be on the first name. If your name is on the report footer, it will appear on the last page. If you include something on the page header or page footer, any information will appear on each page printed. Okay, either in the header or the footer of the page. Okay, so what we do next is we have to fit the information on a single page wide, show labels and fit them to single page wide. So this is no good. Obviously the data is not shown in full. Okay, again the data is not shown in full. The labels are cut off. So this is what you should do. So in layout view, adjust the columns to ensure all data is shown. You can press shift to select the field name and data so you can adjust both pieces of data at the same time. So this is not a good example of what you should be doing. Data is cut off. This is how the data should be appearing. Okay. You can also select particular fields and insert functions. So we can use a number formula in the report to calculate values from fields including sum, average, count, max, min. You need to ensure you are in layout view. Okay. And then in design view, you can add labels. Okay, so make sure if the label is going to appear on the left or on the right. Sometimes you have to print screen this information into the evidence document. If you're counting the records, you can select a text field and then click on format count. So if you do select the text field, you will be restricted to only counting. You can't add up text values. So here's some questions, okay, about formulas in the report. So calculate the average length, position below the length column and format it to 1 decimal place. Has the label average length to the left. Calculate the total number of course codes in this selection and position this number under the course code columns. So this would be a count, okay, so calculate total number of course codes. Course codes would typically be in text format, so you'll have to count. Calculate the total number of cars. So in a database, each call will be a record. So again, this will be using a count function. So total calls for France, we use the function here. Okay. In design view, as mentioned, you can also add your candidate details